And with me to discuss these programmes are the playwright Alan Plater, football journalist Julie Welch, and astronomer Patrick Moore. First, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the spoof on space fiction, which reached its 6th and final instalment last Monday. This series has had an unusual history, originating first as a BBC radio series in 1978, then as a best-selling book, and finally being adapted for television. The story, and I'm quoting now from the publicity material because I found it completely bewildering, is about two space travellers called Arthur Dent and Ford Prefect, who have had to leave Earth because of its destruction by creatures called Vogons. On their travels, they encounter a variety of galactic luminaries, including a two-headed character called Zaphod Beeblebrox. But the central element in the series is the book, a kind of galactic government publication which offers oral opportunities for the voice of Peter Jones, as it did on radio, and visual opportunities for the use of computerized graphics.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has this to say about the planet of Golga Frincham. It is a planet with an ancient and mysterious history, in which the most mysterious figures are those of the great circling poets of Ariel.
Patrick Moore, as an astronomer, what did you make of all that?
Well, like you, I was somewhat confused. I may say straight away that I like science fiction films, and I don't mind whether they're authentic, such as 2001, or, quite frankly, space opera, such as Doctor Who, if you like. I do like them. And some of it is really ripe for sending up, and this was an attempt to do it. And I think the motive behind this series was entirely laudable. And many of the effects were good. There were some very good touches in it. There were some really funny bits. But where I think it came down was, in my view anyway, the lack of a really connected theme. I couldn't grasp a real storyline, and therefore, like you, I became somewhat confused. The characters weren't built up sufficiently, and there wasn't a coherent theme. So I would say that this was a bold experiment. It's something that had to be done. It needed doing, and it very nearly came off, but not quite.
Julie Welch.
Well, I think the two of you might have found it slightly bewildering because you're too grown up, you see, because I didn't mind it being sort of lacking a theme at all. I agree with you that it probably did lack a theme to a certain extent, but it didn't really matter. I mean, it was just so lovely. It was fantastic to watch.
Alan Plater?
Yes, I spring resolutely to its defence because I'm under great pressure from my children and many friends, young and old, to say that it was terrific. And I think really it was a terrific comedy show. And I think if you followed it through its various manifestations through radio, book, record, television series, as I have been living with it for the last 3 years or whatever, there is a kind of nice elliptical structure to it, if you care to look.
Well, I didn't get the structure, and I'd probably be most unpopular for saying I didn't entirely like it, because it, after all, has become a kind of a cult. Yeah. But I think it's been worth doing, because it set the pattern. And I think the experience gained on that can build up to something rather more coherent and rather funnier. So it was worth doing, even though I don't think this particular series entirely came off.
I think you were right in principle. I think you were right to be wary of a cult. I mean, I am always wary of things like that. What I loved was that it gave a real chance to people like graphic designers, animators, people who, generally speaking, don't get much of a run for their money in our trade.
There I would agree, absolutely. Some of the effects were very good indeed, and the whole thing was well presented. Yeah. I think with a stronger storyline, it could have been a winner.
I don't think, actually, that it'll ever sort of... I don't think it'll ever produce any more similar things. I think that was a one-off, totally. I can't see anything ever being better than what that was.
They're talking about a sequel to it. They're saying that they're...
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be another sequel. I mean, it's just a lot of other people sort of sitting around in the television studio somewhere saying, look what a success Hitchhiker has been. Let's make another, the same sort of theme. That would be awful.
The same sort of theme would be wrong, I think, but science fiction is ripe for sending up, let's face it. It's time something of this kind was done, and I think this is a first attempt, and one that was worth doing, and as I say, it jolly nearly came off, and in my view, not quite.
But when you say that science fiction needs sending up, Patrick, in a way, science fiction is in a way so ludicrous in itself. How can you send it up, as it were?
Well, I wonder how ludicrous it is. You know, science fiction has an uncanny habit of becoming science fact. And you look back to the old novels of the last century, Jules Verne. Well, First Men in the Moon wasn't so very far wrong, apart from his method of propulsion. And I just wonder how much of our present-day science fiction will become science fact.
I think there's a lot of science fiction buffs who would challenge your premise, Ludovic, if I may say so. I'm not a buff, so I can't, but there is some that need sending up, but not all by any means.
But I must say, after having watched The Hitchhiker, I do look forward to the next comedy science fiction series, which I'm sure will come. Not exactly on those lines, but it gives an idea, anyway, that other people can build on.
What did you think? They've made much of the computer graphics, and we saw a glimpse of it then. I mean, it was very clever. Do you think it came off that?
Yes, I do. I think that was the one part that really did come off. And some of those clips about the Hitchhiker's actual guide were really very good indeed. That, in my view, was the best part of the whole thing.
And interesting because they were well written.
They were.
Because it was good writing, it was funny, it was acute, it was sharp.
Yes,
and,
it was a very literary programme, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a literate programme that assumed intelligence among us out here watching, which is a nice premise.
But would you agree with Patrick when he says, I mean, there was a lack, as it were, of a storyline. You weren't quite sure where you were going, why you were going, what was going to happen to you when you got there. You know, it sort of...
But I mean, I never know where I'm going in Crossroads, for instance. Does it matter?
Really.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't agree there. Gulliver's Travels did have a theme. Watching the last end of Hitchhiker, the very last part, when they walk away into the morning, what it was meant to be, quite frankly, I haven't the slightest idea. Possibly I'm dense, I don't know, but it didn't mean anything to me at all.
Patrick, when that happened?
No, I merely looked even more puzzled than I normally do.
Well, thank you all very much.